Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Lions Roar podcast from the DUP. I'm Diane Forsythe and I'm joined today by my colleague Gordon Lyons, the Communities Minister, and we're going to be talking about the UK spending review. And it's all about the headlines, the fine print, what it all really means for us here in Northern Ireland. And it's good to see you, Gordon.
Hi, Diane. Good to be on.
Now, we are obviously seeing the detail as it unfolds, and we need to get into the detail. But let's start by talking about what we have heard has been promised. And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said that this spending review will be worth £20 billion to Northern Ireland by the end of the period. Now, Gordon, that sounds like a huge sum, and we just really need to look at it closely. The government has said that this will mean 1.2 billion for Northern Ireland through Barnett. But what's your take on what this is going to mean for us on the ground in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, well, I'm just looking here now. I've got the laptop open in front of me, and we're looking for the news and the information as it comes through. Honestly, it seems like a good headline. It seems like a good opening figure, but I think what most people in Northern Ireland will want to know is what does this actually mean? What's it going to mean for people in Northern Ireland? What's it going to mean for their schools? What's it going to mean for the health service? Will it mean that our hospitals are going to be properly staffed? Essentially, is it going to improve life for people here? Because unless that money is felt on the ground, it's just another figure and it doesn't mean anything to anybody. So I think that's what's really important. All too often, these figures are announced, and then over the course of the next few days, you see some of the conditions that are attached, or sometimes you see that that money has already been spent or it's been repackaged in other ways. So it's always good to take a little bit of time to make sure we understand what's actually going on.
Absolutely agree with you there, Gordon. We see these huge numbers coming through, and often it is smoke and mirrors where you figure out it's been recycled money. And I would be concerned that with some of Labour's economic management, consequences from this could be further tax rises on working people or a freeze on income tax thresholds, reducing the amount of money in people's pockets. It's a really challenging time for people, and we need to understand what it means for people right across Northern Ireland. But can you tell me, in terms of your own department, Department for Communities, is this spending review really going to make a difference?
Well, the answer to that is that we don't know. So, take housing, for example. I'm reading here that the Chancellor has announced an additional £39 billion for affordable housing. But Northern Ireland, we don't know what the share of that is going to be yet. But we do know there's around an extra £1 billion of resource for Northern Ireland in this statement. So some of that will come through as Barnett consequentials. Now, what that means is the money will come through to Northern Ireland, and essentially it will be up to the executive to decide. Ministers will get around the table, they'll find out how much extra there is, and then they'll allocate that on the basis of the priorities that they have. So certainly from my point of view, my priorities are clear. In particular, we've had a lot of conversation lately about the need to invest in more social housing. I want to make sure that we can meet those targets. There's many other needs, as you'll be aware, right across my department and other departments as well. So this is an opportunity for the executive to consider seriously what our priorities are. We have the programme for government. We need to make sure that we're putting the money to where it's actually going to make a difference. Remember, that's why we're here. We're here to actually make a difference in people's lives, to improve things for families in Northern Ireland. That's what I'm going to be doing, and that's what the DUP colleagues will be doing around the executive table.
Brilliant. And you have shown your demonstrated commitment to housing and obviously face incredible pressures in your department on that. So we look forward to see the outworkings on that. Did I see an additional allocation for some community projects coming through there as well? Do you have
Yeah,
any detail
so
on that?
only that we're getting an additional £11 million for community projects, and that's going to be over the course of 3 years. Uh, so we don't know right now where that's going to go, but I think that's worth keeping an eye on. That's an allocation that has huge potential for communities here. So very keen that we keep an eye on that and see how that can positively impact people. You know, the need that exists out there.
Absolutely. We look forward to getting the detail of it. And obviously, a lot of attention is going to be focusing on the funding announced for the redevelopment of Casement Park. And that falls into your department as well. What is your view?
Well, it seems that the government have now clarified their financial commitment to the redevelopment of Casement Park. But I think it's worth noting that there remains a significant gap between the plans that the GAA have on the table and the funding that is there for that. We had 65 million pounds from the executive, 15 from the GAA, the Irish government's contribution. That took that up to around 120 million pounds in total. And many people were getting very excited about this. They said this was the key day for casement. But I think we need a little bit of reality to set in. We need to recognise that the plans that were on the table were very, very ambitious. So there's going to need to be an additional funding from the GAA, or they're going to need to consider how they change their plans to fit the funding that is available. But as I've said for a long, long time, and the media always forget this, funding needs to be allocated on a fair and equitable basis because we had an agreement previously in 2011. There weren't three parts to that program, there were four. There was casement, Windsor Park, Ravenhill, and what was then sub-regional stadia for football. We have seen progress at Windsor. We've seen progress at Ravenhill, though both still have additional strategic need. Casement wasn't moved forward, and we know why. We know that was because of planning reasons and judicial reviews taken by local residents. But people forget that sub-regional stadia, which was still a key part of that overall funding programme, that was held back, not because of planning reasons, but in my view, because of political reasons. And it was disgraceful that that hadn't been progressed because that £36 million that was set aside isn't worth the same as it was back in 2011. And when I'm asked about this on the media, everyone always asks about casement, but they forget that other key part of the program that was put in place back then. So you often have people that are talking about the need for equality and parity in our society. I'm simply asking the same for all sports in Northern Ireland. Of course, I welcome additional investment. That is a good thing for Northern Ireland and for sporting infrastructure. But we need to see that done on a fair and equitable basis. And what the government seem to have done here is made an allocation for casement, but haven't been making an allocation for other sports. So I think there's questions to be asked of the government on that. And I think the media also need to ask themselves questions about why they haven't been raising the concerns that are shared by many, many people across Northern Ireland at the lack of support for sport in the past number of years as well.
Thank you. And you're right, just to reaffirm the details of the 2011, a long-standing agreement for equilibrium across sport and allocations. And, you know, it is important, as you say, not to forget that football and rugby touch every town and village right across Northern Ireland. And you're right, at some grassroots clubs in my own constituency. And the impact is so clearly felt there. I'm sure you'll agree with me.
Absolutely. And you've had me down at sports grounds in your own constituency, and there are clubs right across Northern Ireland that are crying out for investment. So, you know, from my point of view, I recognise the need that exists, but this can't just be about one specific project. We need to have balance. We need to make sure that investment goes into community level sport as well. And that's where you see the huge benefits in terms of more people taking part, more inclusion, and ultimately better well-being for people right across Northern Ireland as well. So that's where my focus has been, and that's where it's going to continue to be.
So what happens now with Casement Park, Gordon?
Well, ultimately, that will be for the GAA to consider. They have brought forward what they consider to be their strategic need. Um, and in my view, and I've said this for some time, they're going to need to revisit this and say, are we prepared as the GAA to give additional funding? Are they prepared to look at a smaller stadium, something that's more affordable, something that falls into the funding envelope that is available? But I want to make it very clear that as minister, I'm committed to fairness, and that means honouring the spirit of the agreement that was originally in place.
Thank you. And are you planning to engage with all of the sports bodies, Gordon?
Yes, absolutely. I have done in recent weeks. I've met with all of the major sporting bodies in Northern Ireland. I'll continue to do that. I think it's vital that we do discuss the way forward, that we understand the needs of those sports, and that we make sure that we find a way. to meet those needs and ensure that more people get more active more often. That's ultimately what it should be all about. But let's make sure that we have fairness and that we don't have any special cases.
No, thank you. And so finally, to sum up, £20 billion, £39 billion, really big numbers. But the question is for all of us, will Northern Ireland actually feel the benefit? Will our services improve? Our housing targets be met? And will our sports funding be fair? What's your view?
And those are the big questions, and we don't have answers to those right now, but we'll certainly be doing our best over the coming days to make sure that we do get answers to those questions, to make sure that we drill down in these numbers, that we hold the government to account, and we find out what exactly is available for Northern Ireland and where there are responsibilities for the executive. As DUP ministers, we'll be doing our best to make sure that we're delivering on the matters that actually matter to people right across Northern Ireland, on things that will actually make a difference to their lives, improve their lives. That's what we're ultimately here to do. We know we're living in a time of constrained finances, but we need to do the best with what we have. Additionally, I think there's a responsibility on us as ministers to do things differently, to find innovative ways of dealing with some of the challenges that we face. It's not always just asking about more money, but it's about making sure that we do get what we are entitled to, and also making sure that we make sure that money goes as far as it can and that it's focused on the things that really matter to people.
And thank you very much, Gordon, there for joining me today and for that clarity. We look forward to seeing so much more of the detail. And thanks to everyone who has tuned in today for this special episode of The Lion's Roar. Don't forget to subscribe and share and stay with us because we'll be back soon with some more from Inside Stormont.